Hey there, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today in the program, I have Joey and Matt from the social community Charlotte Geeks, and also fellow podcasters. They have a podcast called Guardians of the Geekery, and they are a very wonderful couple, and I'm very excited to talk to them. It was so much fun talking to them, and I really want to get on their podcast, the Guardians of the Geekery. It sounds like a really cool podcast, and we had a lot of fun recording this episode because, Joey and Matt, they're a very wonderful couple, and they have a great story how Charlotte Geeks came to be, and also a great story how about they came together, if you know what I mean. But they were just a fantastic couple, and I'm very glad that they welcomed me into their very geeky home. They had Star Wars toys up, and they were just awesome house. They had Doctor Who themed bathrooms and Star Wars bathrooms, and just unbelievable. They're just a great couple, and they're just a lot of fun to talk to. And they also, I guess, kind of made me an honorary Charlotte Geek. They gave me a pin, which I'm wearing right now, which you can see on the video portion of this podcast. And they said, make sure you wear it around town, and you might run into another fellow geek here in Charlotte. It's kind of the calling card in a sense. So, they're just an amazing couple, and I feel very blessed to have them on the podcast. So, anyway, speaking of amazing things that are happening, let me tell you about my wrestling schedule. I'm going to be doing something that's rather amazing. We'll see if we can get it done because this Friday, October 23rd, I will be performing for Northeast Wrestling in Clark, New Jersey. And I can't be dilly-dallying because I got to hurry up and get back home because on Saturday, the next day, October 24th, I will be performing for Western Carolina Pro Wrestling in Drexel, North Carolina. Also, I'll be doing an improv seminar in between there. So I'm not going to get a lot of sleep this weekend. So I will be very busy and doing a lot of things. But if you can't catch me physically, you can catch me on social media because I'm available on Twitter at ManScoutManning and on Instagram at ManScoutManning. If you got any questions about the podcast, make sure you email me at jake@sslshow.com. Or if you want to book me for an upcoming wrestling event, make sure you email me at manscoutmanning@yahoo.com. Anyways, let's get into this awesome podcast with Joey and Matt from Charlotte Geeks and Guardians of the Geekery here on Stranger Southern Land. Anyways, I'm sitting here with Matt and Joey from Charlotte Geeks. Guys, thank you for bringing me into the Geek, what was the name?
The new Geek Gala headquarters.
The Geek Gala headquarters.
HQ, yeah.
I know. I appreciate it. I'm wiping some drool off my face right now. You have just about every Star Wars toy that I wanted as a kid.
And a few more that on the way, I'm sure.
And just kind of sitting there like it would be in most people's houses where they would have like, I don't know, fake flowers, but you have like
plastic little figurines.
Yeah, exactly, which is awesome.
Yeah.
If you're going to put anything up in a house, fake flowers or Star Wars toys, I think you guys made the better decision.
Yeah, TIE fighters.
Thank you.
Yes.
TIE fighters all the way.
Really ties the room together.
Yes,
Really.
exactly. It goes with the Captain America rug. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, I got introduced to you through Candace, who I talked to with Robot Johnson.
Right.
Yeah.
And she told me about you, Joey, about Charlotte Geeks.
Yes.
And this awesome community that you've formed and created and brought together. Can you just explain to me what Charlotte Geeks is and
Absolutely.
how it started?
So Charlotte Geeks started in 2008, which is coincidentally when I moved to Charlotte. So I had gone to my first sci-fi convention in 2007 and then went to my second one in 2008 and said, I don't want to have to wait a whole year to hang out with a bunch of people that get all the geeky things that I get. There must be people here in Charlotte that do that. There must be people besides NASCAR and the Panthers that I can hang out with. And we started on LiveJournal. We actually started in the back of the Caribou on Park Road, and there was 9 of us, and we started putting the word out. And then we went
How'd you
on-
put the word out then? This was very early
Right.
social media.
Yeah,
I don't know if
live-
message boards or it was an AOL instant
no,
messenger at that time.
It was LiveJournal.
Okay, LiveJournal.
LiveJournal
Okay.
had some community, so it was kind of like a message board.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on the Dragon Con LiveJournal, and I mentioned that I was going to start a group called the Charlotte Geeks on LiveJournal for anybody from Dragon Con that wanted to join. And at first there was 8 of us, then there was 16, then there was 25. And I was like, that's enough of us. Let's go do some stuff. And from there, I actually joined Meetup, which is a great site if you're trying to learn about your city and figure out where your people are at. Is you can either look online and see if there's a group like what you're looking for, or you can start a group like that. So I started the Charlotte Geeks. The next thing I know, I had 100 members, then 300, and now we're up over 2,000. So it's been amazing. But we get to hang out every month. We do different things. We do movies and munchies. They're called geek meets. So movies and munchies. We go and do, sometimes we'll go to painting with a twist and paint some pictures, which you've seen around here of geeky things. We get a lot of free movie passes from our friends at Warner and Fox and different things like that. But we also do some charity events throughout the years, do some sci-fi conventions, and sometimes we just hang out and play board games. So it's a fun way to get to know other people in the community. And when we got to the 1-year mark of our first year, we had 300 members. And I said, if there's that many of us, then we need to start giving back to the community. So we started the Geek Gala, which is our annual charity event, which is coming up in just a little bit, end of October. So,
Well, we talk about let's take a step back
Sure.
here for a second. Like you said,
in time.
yeah, in time for,
Okay.
for the both of you, in the sense that, when did both of you realize that you were a geek? Is it geek for you guys, or is nerd the proper nomenclature? Because I've always heard that's a geography thing. Like I heard nerd more than I heard geek in a sense.
There's geek, nerd, and dork,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, those are the three.
Classifications.
Yeah. In my opinion, a nerd tends to be somebody who has a high aptitude for scientific or academic things and tends to be more of a
Intellectual.
an intellectual
Yeah.
thing with a social awkwardness built in. A geek is anybody that's passionate about a thing. You could be a wrestling geek, you can be a baseball geek, but you can also be a sci-fi geek or a book geek, or you could be a car geek. It's just that you have a passionate about that and you're really into it. And then a dork is somebody who knows the difference. So,
Yeah.
that would be
Dorks
me
are
also.
hopeless. So, geeks, there's some hope.
Yeah. I didn't realize that I was a real geek until I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
I went to my first sci-fi convention and said, "These are my people. Where have they been all my life?"
And it's funny when you find that, and sometimes you find people find that when they're in their 20s, and even like you said, in your 30s, you're
Yeah.
like I've always felt like a little out of place.
Yeah.
It definitely was that way for me in wrestling, because I grew up in a small town.
Right.
And I felt like I would have fit in with everybody. The thing is, I blended over so many lines, but so did most people. Captain the football team. That's only because there was only 4 senior boys out for football.
Right.
Part of National Honor Society. Well, that's because they take 8 people every year, and there's 21 people in my graduating class.
Right.
So it's all numbers for me. So yeah,
Right.
you're I'm all things. But at the same time too, I really like pro wrestling and passionate about it, probably much the way you guys are passionate about the things you were passionate about, maybe comic books, sci-fi, So I always felt out of place. But when I found my place in wrestling, I know that feeling when you're like, this is where I belong.
Right.
There are others out there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah, I think
I would
it's,
say you're a geek for sure.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Wrestling geek, yeah.
I don't know. For me, I think as a girl, I think it took me a little longer to recognize that I was a geek because I wasn't the nerd. I wasn't
Because you got to deal with all the social things that they push a
Right.
girl into.
And I grew up in a very jock-oriented family. I mean, all my brothers were athletes. I went to track meets and basketball games and all that kind of stuff. But they also enjoyed watching Star Trek and all of those things. So I never knew that it was like my passion until later in life. I mean, I read a lot, like Wrinkle in Time and all of the sci-fi books, but I never identified that made me a geek. It wasn't until I
It's
was
just the thing
kind of out on
that
my
you
own.
liked, and you're like, well, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody likes these things, right? It's
Right.
almost like this thing. Well, everybody likes this.
Well, I was the non-athlete in the family, so
Yeah.
I always knew I wasn't the athlete, but I didn't know what that made me.
Mm-hmm.
And I came from this small town environment, so there wasn't a lot of other people just like me. You know, they were kind of like, "Oh, Joey, she reads a lot of books."
Well, where'd you come from?
My mother, she denies it.
Oh, okay.
But you know, I really
I
told
set
her to
myself up
stop.
for
It
that.
hurts my feelings. So
I what town? I set you up perfectly for
You
it. So
did.
thank you. Now the real answer, please.
I'll be here all week. I live here. No, I actually came from New England, in a small town in New Hampshire off of Hampton Beach, so Atlantic Ocean. So I grew up around a lot of tourists, so you know, that kind of stuff came and went. But we definitely played Super Friends as kids, so I was Wonder Woman, but you know, that's how it rolls. And then, so it was a smaller town, but I went to a lot of more religious schools. So again, it was like class of 30. Class of 104. So, you know, it wasn't about the sci-fi world because maybe that was evil. So
Yeah, that's leading you astray.
yeah.
And
it's taking
ladies
my focus
and
away.
ladies have to act a certain way. So
Yes.
you've got all these people pointing you in this direction.
Absolutely.
Sit over this.
Absolutely. So it was definitely a different world for me. But in my 30s when I was on my own, I definitely could explore what I wanted to. And I had a friend who actually invited me to Dragon Con, which is this huge sci-fi convention in Atlanta every year. 55,000 people the year that I went. And I was standing on the street corner with a Jedi on one side, a Stormtrooper on the other, a pirate behind me, a ninja in front of me. And I was like, these are my people. And I just never looked back. So, but I don't know. As a guy, did you have a different
Yeah, what about you,
experience?
Matt? Like, it seems like you can get away with, liking, all those sci-fi things.
Yeah.
Like, as a guy, you can be, I like it, dude, whatever,
Yeah. Well, I would say it was definitely easier for the sci-fi stuff like that because I grew up in Star Wars, and of course Star Wars is still around.
Yeah.
And it's about to get even larger again when the new movie comes out. And so, I had the action figures, and all my friends would play the Star Wars action figures. So you're pretty lucky. It's a good end. But I'd definitely say it was around junior high when I kind of stuck out a little bit. A couple of my friends and I created our own magazine that we had on notebook paper. And it was one issue. There was a circulation. We just passed it around the school. But my friend could draw, I could write, and I would write it. He would illustrate it. And with a couple other friends that would put little jokes in there. And, of course, some of the more jockey guys would pick on us a little bit. But this was the first time I thought, like, oh, I'm a little bit different. I'm doing something that not everybody's doing, obviously. But and it was before computers and all this fun stuff. So you couldn't just mass produce a million copies.
If you had the tools that the kids had today.
Oh my gosh, I would have had. Well, it wouldn't even be a print thing. It would have been circulation all over the internet. It would have been great. So, but that's where it kind of started. And then I got into radio and loved that. I was at CPCC here, and I was taking a speech class, and I was just making up all these speeches I had to do. Like right before I'd go in, I would just come up with an idea, grab a golf club, and just come up with a speech. And my speech teacher was like, "So you're not preparing any of these?" And I'm like, "No." And she said, "You need to go into radio." And I was like, "Okay." And that's all it took was kind of a little push like that, somebody to say they believe in you.
Yeah.
And I got into radio and did that, and then I decided to go to college after that. Go back to college.
So did you grow up here in North Carolina?
I was born in Savannah, Georgia, and then moved to Ohio and Florida, kind of back and forth. My dad would keep getting transferred. He worked for Owens Corning Fiberglass, and so, but
very blue collar background.
Oh yeah. So we moved a lot, and my dad, not really getting the whole thing with the kids, would move into a town before us, get a rental house. We'd move there in one school district. And they'd be building a house or searching for a real house. Then we'd move to another school district, and it would always work that way. So it was two schools each time we would move in the same year. So it's like, so I had to learn to make friends very quickly. And sometimes with guys, you know how it is. It's you get into a fight, and that guy ends up being like your best friend.
Yeah.
It's just like this weird. I don't know. You probably didn't have that, but it was fisticuffs, and it was back then when you could have fisticuffs and not be expelled or arrested or something.
They got to take you to counseling. Or
there were no guns and knives. It was just a little, maybe get a bruise or a black eye or something.
Boys being boys.
Yeah. So that that part was a little bit easy. A little bit easier, a little bit more, I guess, dangerous physically, but it was fun. And then I kind of forgot about my geeky side, and I went in 2000. I went to San Diego Comic-Con and met this artist, and we were talking, and this guy Diego Jordan, and we ended up doing some comic books together, Leather Jacket Guy, and some independent stuff like that. And I got my geek back, and
it's funny how it sleeps away, but it's always there.
It's always in the background. Yeah, it's like kind of tapping the shoulder, like, "Hey, don't forget about me."
Well, when you grew up, what type of comic books did you like? Were you a comic book guy?
Oh god, yeah. Spider-Man was my favorite. I wish I could draw, but it takes me so long to draw, and it's not very good.
Yeah.
But I could write and come up with the ideas. And I could do some really bad sketches to get my point across. So I
did the same exact thing growing up. Like I developed my own character, and it was the drawings looked awful, but it had the whole dossier.
Yeah,
because I was always interested in X-Men, and they had the X-Men trading cards, and they give it their superpowers, the stats, and stuff like that. Because I was also a big baseball collector too.
Oh, perfect.
Baseball cards. So that kind of worked that way with that. So I draw this crude sketch of this guy and the stats and his origin stories and stuff like that. Comic books were always very big with me. And the thing that hooked me into comic books was the death of Superman story. Was there a story that hooked you into comic books?
It really wasn't the stories. It's weird since I like to write, but really the covers always kind of drew me in. I remember this reprint series for Spider-Man called Marvel Tales, and it was basically they would tell some earlier stories, and there was this artist named Gil Kane, and he was a cover artist, and he would do these great original covers for the reprint series, and it was this guy, Kraven the Hunter, and he had Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was beaten. That was the cover, and it was just so graphic and just kind of, it told a story in just one illustration, and I was like, I love this, and I love all comics. I don't collect them so much anymore, but I definitely read them. And
what were some ones other than Spider-Man that kind of piqued your interest?
Star Wars, because when Marvel first had it, they just went crazy. I mean, they had this giant 8-foot green rabbit alien called Jax.
Okay.
And they just made it up. So they were allowed to do anything they wanted to in between the movies. And they did. They just made the weirdest stuff up. And it was just, to me, it was just like, wow, they had free reign and they just did it. And then they would come back around when Empire Strikes Back came out, and they'd have to kind of realign things really quickly.
And now this alien species is gone forever.
Yeah, it's like, where's the big green rabbit? Where'd that guy go?
He is gone forever. We have destroyed the race. Now we are back to here.
But anyway, so those, and I loved the Justice League because I loved Green Arrow. I thought that was a cool hero, and now I'm excited because he's got his show on TV.
Show.
Right.
So
it really is like the golden age of geekery right now.
Gosh.
Because you've got great shows on TV, you've got great movies coming out every year, you've got comic books, you have tons of literature, and you've got an ebook reader so you can get them all and carry them around in your pocket. And then you have a lot of people who, with the internet, you can find your people a lot easier than you ever could. And so it's interesting to kind of see how people can come together. And then, of course, there's great events all around the Carolinas that you can go to that are just popping up all the time. So it really makes it fun. But I was definitely more of the TV. I was more the Star Trek, Twilight Zone, Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica.
What was your favorite Twilight Zone? I always ask people that are Twilight Zone fans because they always got their favorites.
I really liked not the William Shatner one where he's on the plane, but the William Shatner one where he's in the diner and he keeps getting the fortune, and it keeps telling him stuff. And it's like, dude, why do you keep putting the quarter back in there? You know, it's not going to tell you something you want to hear.
Yeah.
It was that. I love the psychological nature of Twilight Zone, like why somebody would do that, you know, and what motivates them. The one where I love some of when they redid the whole series, when, you know, the people in the elderly house suddenly got to be kids again at night and go and be kids again. And it was just that kind of a thing that it was like, what would you do if you had a chance to kind of do things over again? What would you do differently? So, and are things really what they're things? Anything with dolls or clowns, though?
There's one that still haunts me to this day, and I can't remember what it is, and I'm afraid to look it up because it disturbed me. Like it was something like a spacecraft, and that the small doll came out.
We saw that one during the marathon.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
woke up to
Yeah.
it, and it
Agnes
freaked us
Moorehead.
out.
I remember my dad watching that one.
It was
and
like a barn, and it was
Yes.
like this miniature
Little
alien and
miniature-
robot.
Yeah.
And it's like killing her slowly.
Yeah.
In this
Like-
big battle. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one was insane.
And that
Yeah.
was Agnes Moorehead, who,
Okay.
you know, was the mother in Bewitched. That was her.
Okay, because I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
recognizing. I remember
Yeah.
like the character in the recognize her somewhere else.
Yeah.
That like obviously from Bewitched. I've seen that show, and it's much more upbeat
Oh
than
my
what was
gosh,
going on in
yeah,
that
yeah.
moment.
Right.
So it was
Yeah.
just destroying everything in my
because
head.
black and white, and it was so. I mean, the whole thing was so dark because it was at night, and
Well, and she
Oh my
doesn't say
gosh.
anything.
Yeah.
She doesn't say anything because she's by herself.
oh my
So it's
gosh.
not till the end that you find out that the little toy was not a toy. It was Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there'll always be
Spoiler.
that big.
I always do it
Yeah.
in the wrong order, but spoiler.
Spoiler first, then say what the spoiler. Yeah,
people are still gonna be freaked out if they ever see it.
Yeah.
You know?
yeah, because we fell asleep. It was one of those marathons they had around New Year's, I guess, and we woke up to that.
Because we're party people.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm just like, what in the world is going on here? And I was scared. I mean,
Yeah,
that's my type of horror. I mean, stuff like that, and
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock. It's like the stuff that you have to think about and can.
Yeah,
kinda
when I
creep
think
around.
of it, every time I'm bringing to the Twilight Zone, that image is like burned in my memory. You know,
It's so creepy.
And then I have to think about the one where the lady has the car accident and she doesn't realize she's dead,
Yeah.
and then like at the end she gets a phone call and she's just like she just walks off, and that's how they end it. That's what I
Oh
mean.
Yeah.
my god.
And just like that's how you're gonna leave us, like
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
leave us here, like you can't leave that guy out there, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh my
like
gosh.
Yeah.
So-
Or yeah, there's this
So
Twilight
many.
Zone was there was so many great episodes, and just to get that story and just such a finely woven little nugget of information.
Like 25 minutes or something. They do
You
that
know,
whole story.
now you watch some of the stuff on TV. I mean, we have some great stuff out, but some of the mainstream stuff, I just scratch my head and go, "Why is this funny? I don't get it." Give me TV. I'll go back to the old times. I'm a crotchety old person. Go back to the old things where things are good.
not as good as the back in the day.
That's right.
CGI though, I like the special effects for sci-fi much better now than the old days, but I like the content a little bit more from the old series. So
But you also talk about Star Trek. Were you a big fan of Next Generation? Because that was the one I was the biggest fan of.
I was really into the original series.
Yeah, I mean I like the original,
Yeah.
but like it was the Next Generation one. I don't know what it was with that one that I really liked.
Yeah, I definitely respected a lot of the series after that. But, you know, that was kind of one of my first really intros into the sci-fi geek world. So, you know, I think there's something about Leonard Nimoy that I'll always prefer an episode of that.
Star Trek seems to be the gateway drug for when it
Yeah.
comes into everything sci-fi and geekery in a sense that it's the gateway drug.
Or Doctor Who.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Doctor Who's a little bit. I don't know if it is quite as like people would stumble onto that as much.
Those are fighting words.
I'm not saying it's a British
saw the
thing.
Doctor Who
I'm just
bathroom.
saying that
Look at
the biggest
The shoes, you're looking at the pillow.
well, the biggest. What I'll say is the biggest redneck in the world could stumble onto to Star Trek, where
Right.
Doctor Who, you really have to almost kind of be looking out
The biggest
for.
redneck in the world is probably watching Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Because that's their people.
Exactly,
You know?
they can identify. them. It
But
seems
yeah,
like-
yeah. No, for me, I babysat a lot, and Doctor Who was the thing that was on PBS while I was babysitting late at night waiting for the folks to come home. So Tom Baker and watching that, and, you know, a guy in a box going around and traveling with humans or earthlings was definitely intriguing to me, and being able to go back and forth in time, and what would you change and what can't you change, and how do you deal with that. So,
well, what was your favorite Doctor?
My first Doctor was Tom Baker, which was the fourth Doctor. And then, of course, the series went off the air in the 1980s after Paul McGann. And then they came back with the ninth Doctor, which was Chris Eccleston. They talk about the reboot. And definitely Chris Eccleston for a long time was my second favorite Doctor. But I have a theory about Doctor Who, and it's kind of a boyfriend theory, because Doctor Who, I saw Tom Baker. That was my first introduction. That was all I really knew about it. Within Doctor Who, the Doctor can, instead of dying, he can regenerate. And when he regenerates, he changed what he looks like. It's a really good media trope to, get a new actor in place when the other one
if you're like, as an TV executive, TV writer,
Brilliant.
That's the most brilliant thing ever.
But I didn't know about the regeneration option. So, one Saturday I'm babysitting, PBS comes on, and instead of the curly-haired guy with the bright blue eyes coming out with the fedora and the scarf, out walks this blonde guy in a cricket outfit with a piece of celery on his lapel. And I'm like, who the heck is this? And what have you done with my Tom Baker? And I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I kind of stopped watching Doctor Who for a while. Then they rebooted the series in 2005, and a friend of mine's like, no, you really should watch it. And I started watching it, and I liked it. And Chris Eccleston only stayed for one season. At the end of that season, he regenerated. And I was like, okay, I know what this is. So it's kind of like, that first guy you date, he breaks your heart and you're like, I'll never date again. And the next guy that comes along, total rebound guy, and you don't really want to have anything to do with him. It's like he's asking you out and you're like, no, dude.
You're working
got
through some
celery on
stuff.
your lapel.
I'm working through some stuff.
Yeah. And then, so you give dating a try again, like I did with Chris Eccleston. And then when this regeneration happened, I didn't want to end the relationship, but I realized there were more fish in the sea. So when David Tennant came along, I was like, okay, I can deal with the 10th Doctor.
He's got some positives.
Yeah. I was still, he didn't line up to the first one or to Tom Baker for me. But I was like, okay, he's not bad. But a lot of my friends got into Doctor Who at that point. So when David Tennant, after 5 years, that's a long-term relationship with a doctor, when he's been
a good boyfriend, he's been there,
he's
pretty
been there,
supportive,
he has, he's
don't know if you want to settle down with him necessarily, but he's a good boyfriend. You can take him out on dates. He's really awesome.
He looks, he's willing to stand in the rain and cry and say he's sorry. He's the hipster ultimate boyfriend. And then, Matt Smith comes along and he's just crazy. And a lot of people are all up in arms and they're like, nobody can ever be David Tennant. And I was like, okay, totally been through this. We'll work through it. Eventually we'll get the doctor that we lock in. So, I think it's one of those things where you kind of get away from it. You come back and everything. So Tom Baker is still my doctor. And I'm really happy because BBC America started showing some of the older Doctor Who's on TV again, so you get to go back and enjoy them again. But, I'm okay with Peter Capaldi doing it, so I'm sticking it out. My house is still the House of Who, so it's kind of everywhere.
He's a calm boyfriend. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes.
We're going to some fancier restaurants these days with him. We're expanding our horizons a little bit, but I don't know. We'll see where we go.
Once in a while, I might just want some fish sticks and custard. That's
exactly. Step up like that. But,
I love that theory.
It's a great theory. I've never heard it explained like that.
But it is. It's just, you have to deal with the whole regeneration thing. So.
Yeah. But, speaking about relationships and stuff like that, we were talking off camera about you two coming together.
Yeah.
Like, you two are passionate about, things that are sci-fi, comics, and everything that is geek, if we're going to put it under one umbrella.
Right.
It's you two. And you talked about, something that I think is really, really unique is you dated people that didn't understand, kind of your love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would... not to speak badly. Maybe,
No, we're not trying.
But
This isn't a talk bad about your exes podcast.
Yes,
This
it is. No.
don't make me cry on this show. You promised. You promised.
No,
But you're with me now. It's all good.
Yeah, but
That's true.
it's how you know that
Yeah, because I mean, I was writing some independent comic books, and it was no secret to the person I was dating, and then ended up marrying that person and never read the comic book. And I was like, okay, that's all right. And but I wasn't hiding it. I mean, she knew I was doing it.
he was selling it. He was going out on weekends and selling it.
Yeah, going to conventions.
but it's obviously something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
You think the person that is passionate about you would want to know what your passion is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was just kind of like one of those things like, okay, and I overlooked it, and then it was like, it's back when there were still a few cartoons on Saturday morning, and I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this, I think it was Young Justice, so like the younger Justice League, Kid Flash and things like that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was on, and I was like, this is exciting. I remember watching Saturday morning cartoons. That's what I grew up with, Super Friends, you had mentioned, and stuff like that. And she came in, and she was like, you're just going to watch cartoons all day? And I said, it's a half an hour, and it's only like a 2-hour block, and then there's no cartoons again.
What just threw that I'm doing this all day? It's on TV right now. Have you been? I've only been watching it for 5 minutes. How is that all day?
Yeah, and then I kind of knew maybe some things were not great, but I wasn't being supported. Basically, was the short of it.
Yeah.
And then, now I have someone who is supportive, and we moved into the new Geek Gala headquarters, and we had these traditional decorations, and
They're all in a box.
they're on a box because we were like, well, wait, you like this, I like this. What if we do it like this? What if we put 5,000 Funko Pops on shelves? And we have done that. So yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we have a promise to each other. If the Funko Pops ever fall on our head while we're sleeping, we have to stop buying them. But
It's time to
That's
time
where you
to
draw the
quit.
line.
so we
Yeah.
haven't put any up in the bedroom yet, so I can keep buying them. So
but it's just like we were saying
they're
off
supportive,
camera. Is there's that sense of like you would get something that you were excited about, like you would get these Funko
Yeah.
Pops, and then all of a sudden like they were like, well, if you're gonna get this, I have to get this, and there's always that compromise when you're with somebody that doesn't.
Yeah.
The passions don't
Yeah.
line up.
But there was really no compromise. I mean, it's just like she'd be like, "Oh yeah, you can buy the C-3PO pillow and
display
R2-D2.
it proudly."
Yes, and it's so I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to order these," and she's like, "Okay, that sounds good." They came
It'll
and
look
she
good
was,
on the couch. Yeah,
yeah,
go
and she was
for
more
it.
Yeah.
excited than I was, I think. And I was
yeah,
like,
the only
"This is
time I would
good."
ever tell him he couldn't buy something is usually because I'd already ordered it for him. So.
Yeah, so it's a good problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, do check with me on some things when it comes around holidays, because I'm probably going to buy it. So, I used to travel around, well, I still do, to conventions and talk about geek dating. And it comes up a lot, can a geek date a non-geek? And it's like, well, yeah, you can, but why would you? Not that there's anything wrong with them, but it's...
But why date humans? You
Why date humans?
Why
If you
do
have options. No, but I mean, I was in a relationship where, I was an avid reader, and I think the entire time I was married, my first husband read a chapter in a book, and it was on his bedside table and was an inch thick, and it just, there wasn't that connection. And I think when you get to find somebody who's also a geek like you are and shares your passions, and it can be a geek about anything, but if you need to find the person in love that's going to be a good connection for you. For us, it was, now I will tell you, when we first started dating and he told me that he wrote comic books and he brought me over a set of them, I didn't read it right away. And that was because I really, really liked him, and I was really scared what I was going to do if it was bad. But then I read it, and I started laughing out loud, and I was like, oh my God, thank goodness. Because he's really funny. So we have so much fun now, and we look at our lives and say, if we had stayed with the people that broke our hearts, we wouldn't be where we are now. I mean, we wake up laughing, and when one of us is upset about something outside of our lives, the other one can crack them up. And when I get excited about a TV show or a series, a lot of times he'll sit down and start watching it. Next thing I know, he's hooked.
But he knows why you're excited.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
And
saying?
then-
It's not
and
like
it's-
it's not like him, like somebody else going, "Oh, you're excited over this TV show. Why is that?"
Yeah.
No, he knows. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Well, and we know our taste buds. So like he wasn't as familiar with Doctor Who when we started dating. And now he's as into it as I am. And I hadn't watched The Arrow and Flash. And I've recently sat down and caught up on those. And I'm like, these are awesome. And I have a comic book box now. So when he goes and picks up his comic books every week, he gets mine as well. Because now I share that passion with him. And I think that's, if you
Makes me
can't
very
enjoy
happy.
the best parts of each other, and support each other and be there for each other, then maybe this isn't the right match for you. And why deny yourself that opportunity for happiness? So,
well, I find it funny that you didn't want to read his comic book because you were afraid it was bad. Because me and my girlfriend, who also wrestles,
right.
We had that going on, which was funny because she used to wrestle on national TV, and I saw her, so I knew she was good, and she'd seen me a couple of times. We were both aware that we were good, but when we first decided to start dating, the first match that we showed, the other one, was very nerve-wracking for each other.
Yeah.
Like, she was on like internet pay-per-view on a show, and she was really nervous about seeing me watch her one of her matches, and it was good and it was great. It was fantastic, and she did all kinds of great stuff. And I was like, how would you ever think that I would not like that? Like, and then I've already seen you wrestle like a million times,
Right.
And then like because she was living in Louisville, so I took a booking that was close to Louisville,
Right.
And I was like, why don't you come to the show? And she came to the show, and like I could tell she was kind of nervous because she hadn't seen me wrestle in a long time, so she didn't know if I degenerated. But luckily, the guy I wrestled was very good and capable, and I was able to do my thing. And it turned out to be a very good match. And I remember her having a friend there, and she's like, whew. But here's that nerve-wracking thing, especially when you've got such a close proximity of that.
Sure.
What if his comic was bad? And you're like,
Right.
oh, we've got to get through this now.
Yeah, well, he definitely had some fear in the beginning of like showing his true geek self. I think, until we had been dating for a while, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh my God, I think you're geekier than I am. So
Well, how did this union come together? How did it happen?
I stalked him on Facebook.
That's the way it always happens these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, she stalked.
So I had been in a long-term relationship. I'd been married, got divorced, and then dated around, been in a long-term relationship. And then I started a blog called Joey Writes, and I talked about a lot of my dating experiences, and I tested a lot of different dating sites and would report the results, good, bad, or ugly. And somebody, it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I was sitting on the couch trying out this new app that somebody had told me about, and it was it was Tinder. Swipe left if you like them, right if you're not interested. If you both swipe and it comes up that you're a match, you can talk to each other. And I saw his picture. He had a Star Wars shirt on. I was like, this is good. And
And it was that conscious, like, listen, you've just got to deal with this.
yeah.
Because when I went that route a couple of times, like I put a picture of me in my wrestling trunks. I'm like, if
Yeah.
you can't deal with all this
Yeah.
in the front, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So saw a Star Wars shirt, messaged him. He didn't answer back. And sitting there on a couch a week later, and a friend's like, "What are you looking at?" And I'm like, just sitting there. We were watching Doctor Who or something, and I'm swiping in between commercials. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm doing this app. She goes, "Well, how does it work?" And I'm like, "Well, And I explained to her, and I'm like, the problem is I keep getting messages from this guy that I don't want to talk to, because after I swiped right that I liked him, I couldn't figure out, because I was new to the app, how to not like him anymore. And he kept saying stupid stuff, and I was like, this is not for me. I'm like, who I really want to talk to is this guy. And I tapped it like 3 times, which brought me to his profile, where I saw that he hadn't logged in like 4 weeks. And I'm like, well, here's the problem. Here I am in all my awesomeness, and he doesn't even know that I've messaged him yet.
Yeah.
So one of the things with Tinder is it tells you who you have in friends mutual friends with. And our two friends included a comic book artist that we both knew and a comic book store owner that we both knew. And I said, well, they're on my Facebook page. I'll go search for a guy named Matt on their pages. And found the Star Wars picture of him and messaged him, well, friended him. And he answered back. And my friends were like, you shouldn't do that. That's really creepy. And I'm like,
what's he gonna do? Not talk
I
to me? Like, he's already
like,
doing that right now.
It's online. The worst thing you can say is no. So we started chatting, and next thing we know, we had met, and we both just went, whew, when we met. Well, he lied to me. So he told me he was 5'2", and I didn't know what to do about that because I'm 5'10". And I was like, am I going to be that shallow person that admits that height matters to me? And then he told me he was actually 6'2". And then he told me the wrong year for his birthday, but that was truly a mistake. He was like, wait.
It was a typing.
Yeah. Sure, whatever.
It's okay. I forgot that I was like 28 for like a whole year. So I
kept telling people I was a year older for a whole year because I just couldn't remember.
I did the same thing too.
Once in my 40s, it's like I don't even barely keep up with it. But
so and then we started dating, and he came to a couple geek meets, and he survived, and then we did the whole comic book exchange thing, and I survived, and he just kind of jumped in full force. He started dating me right before the Geek Gala, which is like the busiest time of our year. And I made him promise that he wouldn't break up with me until after the gala was over because I go a little cray-cray. And he stuck it out, and then he popped the question. So.
Well, it's like I already saw her at her worst.
Yeah,
I saw her right before the gala. So.
If this is the worst, and it's only because it's so important to me. So
let's talk about it a little more. What are the things you do?
The Geek Gala is like all the fun things all in one place. We call it the geekiest Halloween party of the Carolinas.
Okay.
You pay one fee to get in, and once you get in the door, everything inside is free except for your alcohol and any raffle tickets you want to buy, and the raffle tickets are $1 each. But we have live musical and comedy performances from the stage. We have a talent show, trivia contest, costume contest, free psychic card readings, caricaturist. We play carnival games like Slay the Sparkly and Toss the Ewoks and Game of Thrones. And you can get little tickets just like at Dave & Buster's, and you can turn them in for prizes at the prize booth. So we do that every year. This year it's on October 24th, so it's on a Saturday. We have a film festival. We have board gaming. And then at the end of the night, we have these huge raffle baskets just full of theme stuff. So one might be all Star Trek stuff, one might be all Star Wars stuff, one might be all Doctor Who stuff. And it's $1 a ticket. We call it the winners, and all the sales from the raffle go to the charity. And this year it happens to be Children's Home Society in memory of my little sister, who was a foster child, and she passed away in 2005. So we try to give back to kids that maybe are having a tough time, because as geeks or as people in small towns, we know what it's like to kind of feel out of place and not necessarily know where home is. And certainly the Charlotte Geeks has made Charlotte home for me. So I definitely want to give back to the kids and have them have an opportunity for home as well. So it's been a lot of fun. 7 years doing it so far. Different theme every year. We've got the Monster Mash theme this year. We've done time travel and zombies and superheroes, and we always announce the theme for the next year at the end of the night, so people have a year to plan their costumes and
that's cool.
and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun.
And is it open to the public? Like anybody?
Yeah, anybody can come in. Ticket prices, you can go on geekgala.com and get a ticket. The ticket right now is $30. It's $35 at the door. Like I said, raffle tickets are $1 each, but that does include food, and if you had bought your tickets early, it also included a T-shirt, but we've passed the deadline for that for this year. But free. I see you're a man who wears T-shirts. So.
Yes, I have a little too many of them right now. Wrestlers tend to get a lot of free T-shirts. So
Yeah. So we have a lot of fun with it. It's really hard to explain to somebody until they come to it. You can go online and see pictures and read, and even me talking about it. Until you get there, you just don't get it. So, but we have a lot of fun with it. So,
okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to let me know more about Charlotte Geeks? I know we've talked a lot about geeks stuff. Like,
Yeah,
what are
well,
some other things?
We do a podcast as well called Guardians of the Geekery. We try to keep up with geeky things going on in town. So if you're trying to find out what the newest geeky thing is, or want to hear what people's opinions are about some of the TV shows and movies that are coming out at any particular time, you can check us out on Guardians of the Geekery. We feel it's our duty to guard the geekery and keep it strong here in Charlotte. So you can check us out there. We are not we are not video like you are here. We're just audio.
Well, it's only because I'm
loveliness.
afraid of like audio recorders, because if I can't see a screen, I get scared. It's not because I'm trying to be fancy. Don't get that confused. I'm a video guy, not an audio guy. You might feel comfortable recording something into a box that you can't see, being a radio guy. Me, on the other hand, a little scared.
Yeah.
I understand.
Because a friend of mine like does a podcast and he records it like on his phone.
Oh,
And I'm like,
sure.
this thing that I take into the bathroom and just check and
Yeah.
scroll through,
Yeah.
I trust this? No, I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. I'll trust the camera. I'll trust this nice mixing board. Thank you very much. I will do that.
Well, we use minor technology. Sometimes if we're on the road, we will use our phones. But we do it a weekly podcast, and we just kind of try to get the word out. And you can find us on Meetup. So if you're looking, and if we're not the thing for you, there's probably something on there that you could do. And if you join, it's free. Anybody who hosts a meetup pays, but to join the group and just go to events is great. So if you're feeling like you're a stranger in the Southland, Meetup's definitely one of those places you need to check out and try out, because you can find out about some great things. But Robot Johnson's going to be at the Geek Gala, by the way.
Okay. Yeah.
And we also have a group called Valentine Wolf. They're they call themselves Victorian Chamber Metal. He plays an electric double bass, and she looks like Wednesday Addams and sings like Sarah Brightman. So beautiful. And then we also have a geeky burlesque show at the end of the night. So
very cool.
if you ever wanted to see what Wednesday Addams looked like in burlesque, you can find that out. So, but it's a lot of good times. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just, Charlotte's got a lot. If you can't find what you like in Charlotte, you must not like much.
What are leave me with each one? You leave me with something that we probably should check out, like as far as like geekery that we if you really should be checking out if you live here in Charlotte.
Yeah, well, definitely for us, we always recommend. There are some great board game stores around. Be There Games, your local game store. I would definitely check those out. It's a great way to kind of find out about some fun stuff you may not have tried out before. For me, I think there are some really cool independent businesses in town, like Park Road Books. If you're looking for a book, you could go to the big box stores, or you could go to Park Road Books, which is so awesome. And it's off of Park Road, and we actually have a book club there that meets there. Mug's Coffee Shop is another great little independent place that if you walk in, get a coffee you like, and walk in a week later, they'll remember what your coffee was, and they'll do it right. And if you don't like your coffee, they'll tell you how to fix it. And, I just think that's the best part of Charlotte. It's the biggest little town you'll ever be in. And you can find friends. It's just up to you to walk out the door and do it. So,
yeah, it's grown so much. I moved here in 1988, and there really wasn't a lot of geeky things to do. And as a comic book guy, it was, and still a great store. Heroes Art, Art Hard to Find, great comic book store. But now there's Rebel Base, which fantastic. There's
it's Rebel Base is
it's more of a toy store, but
it's almost intimidating. Like
Yeah.
I've gone down there a couple times on my lunch hour. I'll go to the Chipotle and then walk down there, and I'll just I'm just gonna walk around 20 minutes because I know I'm gonna see something that I missed the last time I was in here.
oh my gosh! Yeah.
So
Just
yeah.
every nook and cranny.
Troy was the comic book store. Rebel Base was the comic book store that
Yeah,
hooked us together. But yeah, that's a treasure trove. And they're always having fun events. You go online to some of these things and you can find out some really cool stuff. Upstage has spoken word.
Oh gosh.
There's so much cool mini theater stuff. There's improv. There's sketch, as you know. And there's just a whole lot. I mean, that sounds like I work for the Better Business Bureau, but I love Charlotte. I mean, I've lived a bunch of places, and I've been in Charlotte since 2008, not thinking about moving. And I can't say that that's ever been the case before. So
Yeah, and I'll say with doing the podcast, it's at first we were like we weren't thinking of guests right away, and probably about the third episode we had an author on, and then we were like, oh, we've got to have a guest every time now, because this is what it's about. I mean, we're trying to find out about
Interact,
Charlotte.
mingle with people, figure out what's going on.
And,
turn over some stones.
Yeah, and it's just every week it's you're just like, oh wow, we just asked somebody and they're going to come record at our kitchen table.
Yeah.
And that seems like a normal thing to some people. And it's like, it never ceases to amaze me when somebody walks in. Last night we had one of the girls from the Charlotte roller derby.
Yeah.
Roller girls come in, and it was like,
Yeah.
wow, she came over here and, she sat down and talked for 20 minutes with us, and it was great.
Yeah.
And we learned something we didn't know, and hopefully people that listen, do the same thing. But
well, and then like Something Clever, it's a band here in Charlotte that put together Something Clever Con, which was a bunch of heavy metal bands getting together and geeking out. So they had like a whole little mini thing, and Geektopia. I mean, there's just so much
going
in
on
town
right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you guys are definitely ambassadors for
We
everything
are.
geeky, everything cool, everything that's going on in this city. And I can't thank you enough for sitting down and especially sharing this wonderful story of how you two got together.
Oh.
You guys are a wonderful couple. So
Thank you.
thank you for sharing that with me guys today. So
Absolutely.
thank you for being on.
No problem.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.